Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to my sewing room. Today is Friday, August 27th, 2021, and I'm going to show you how to make my schoolhouse block. So I did this schoolhouse block on my blog as a tutorial, and it's a free tutorial, free block pattern, and I did it clear back in July of 2017, and it was to celebrate the coming of my spelling bee book. And my spelling bee book wasn't quite here yet, and I was really wanting to sew some blocks that has to do with school, and so I drew up the schoolhouse block and decided to do a tutorial on it while we were waiting for the book to come. So of course I did the instructions, the cutting instructions, in 6-inch and 12-inch size, just like I do in the book. So you could use this block to substitute with one of these picture blocks. There's 18 picture blocks in this book. And then I've got all the letters in 6 and 12-inch, and the numbers in 6 and 12-inch, and punctuation in 6 and 12-inch, of course. And so I thought it was a perfect time to do this tutorial. I know I've been promising to do it now, because we are into the beginning of school. And I don't know about you, but I've been out of school for a long time, but every time school starts, I feel the need to go school shopping and, buy all the notebooks, the pencils. I'm always in Target looking at the school supplies, because that's my favorite place to buy school supplies. But anyway, so I thought it would be fun to do this tutorial here at the end of August, and so that you could use this schoolhouse block for whatever you wanted. So here's the one that I made. It's the same block. I never did finish it into anything for the tutorial. And of course, I will leave a link to that blog post in case you want to go look at it. You don't have to, because I'm going to be giving all the instruction here. I will also be giving the cutting instructions. I'll be writing them down. But you can go to my blog if you want pictures instead of a video. But this is what the 12-inch block looks like, but of course I put borders around mine afterwards, so this just measures 12 inches finished right now. It's a super simple block to make, because you just break it down. This is like all of my picture blocks. I thought this would be kind of fun to show you how I do my picture blocks from start to finish, and so you can kind of get an idea of that if you haven't ever sewn my blocks before. Sometimes they look intimidating because they have a lot of pieces to them, but that just doesn't really matter. We break it down into sections. And so let's get started by talking about the cutting. And let me just put that, I'll put this up here so I can look at it when I'm sewing, because I always like to have a picture or something like that, so to look at. But of course, here in my book, you always have pictures to look at in the cutting part. Let's see, where's my picture blocks? Those are my letters. Here we go. So for instance, my cake block right here. So you always have a picture of it, and you always have the corresponding letters. This is the 6-inch size, the 12-inch size. And so, that's like with all of, oh, and in the opening video, I forgot to mention that. In the opening video, I showed you a lot of pictures from the photo shoot that took place here in my house. Most of my books, photography, take place here in my home. And the spelling bee photo shoot was really fun. I got to use a lot of my vintage items and stuff around the house. And so that's what the slideshow was that you saw in the opening, was just some favorite photos from that photo shoot in spelling bee. But anyway, so, all right, I promise we're going to get started here. I just kind of want to explain about the cutting a little bit. So what I do is I like to use my So Handy stickers. This is the package that they come in. They come in a lot of different colors, so that you can use different colors on different fabrics to show up if you want. But I always have, obviously, the letter that corresponds with each piece, and so I like to just stick them right on there. And Sometimes I use alphabetties. I like to use those as well. But when I have something with a lot of pieces like this, I usually like to have my design board up. And so I like to have something that sticks on to them. And I also like the fact that you can leave these on during the whole process while sewing. And you can iron on them, you can sew over them, everything. And then you can peel them off at the end and it doesn't leave a residue at all. They're kind of like a washi tape type sticker in the back, and so it's not going to leave any residue, and that way you don't ever lose track of your pieces and you always know what you're sewing with according to the pattern picture and things like that. All right, so let me set those aside. All right, so let's break this block down. And how this block is sewn is literally by rows. So this is going to be the top row, this is going to be the second row, and then those can be joined together. This is the third row, and then those can be joined together. And then this right here, not the bottom step and not the grass, but this right here is one row, the bottom of the schoolhouse, and then this is the last row. And then once you get all of those rows sewn, then you just sew them together, and that's your block. And so that's why I kind of want to show you step by step how I do it per row, so that you can just watch me sew and watch the progress as I sew, put them back on my design board so I'm not losing pieces. I will be pressing all my seams open, and I'm hopefully, for those of you who are experienced sewers, this is just a fun free pattern for you. For those of you who are not experienced quilters or block piecers, or who have not pieced my blocks before, hopefully this will help you to not be so feel so intimidated, maybe, that you just see that you just break it up in little sections and then just sew them together and the block is complete. And so what I'm going to be doing first is this first row, and all I'm going to be doing is easy corner triangles for this roof piece. So what I do is I take this piece A, a piece Q, and I'm just going to lay that right there from corner to corner. And of course I have my Seam So Easy guide here, and I'm going to be following this center line. So they're right sides together and they're lined up perfectly, not hanging over or anything like that. And I'm just going to start sewing, and I'm going to follow this corner on this center line right here. Okay, now I'm just going to put a scrap of fabric in between because I want to show you what I mean when I'm doing these folded corners. Okay, oh, whoops. Okay, here's a good, okay, let me pull this back in. Here's a great example of, you have to pay attention which direction you're sewing. Okay, for this to be this side, see how that looks? I should have sewn from this corner to this corner, but because it's a mirror image, look, I can just flip that over and it's not a big deal. So now I'll just make sure that I pay attention to which direction I'm doing it, going that way. And this is also what I mean by about you can do this, just peel those off and it doesn't leave, there's no sticky residue at all whatsoever. So after I stitch that, then I'll just trim with an approximate 1/4 inch seam allowance. It doesn't have to be exact because you don't need a 1/4 inch seam allowance, it's already sewn. So I just stitch that, and then I'm going to press that open. And so I bring that over here, press it open real quick. I can put the quilter's clapper on there if I want, or it really helps, but it's not necessary. This is just something that's made out of a special wood that absorbs the heat very quickly, and then it's weighted as well. And so because it absorbs the heat quickly, it will help your block to lie flat and your seams to stay open. All right, so what I'm going to do with this, let's see, I'm going to kind of set that aside a little bit so we can kind of see both, is switch sides. Okay, and now pay attention to how I sew this one. So now I know, you'll have a picture to look at, obviously, but I'm going to sew from this corner to this corner. And that's something that I always check right after I finish sewing. Before I trim the seam allowance, I always fold it back just to make sure, yeah, that's right. And then I can go ahead and trim. All right, so I'll just quickly go over here. Set the seam again for a few minutes. And if those triangles that I trimmed off were big enough to cut a 1.5 inch square out of, then I would have. But because they're very tiny, by the time I trim them off, here, let me grab them back out of my garbage bin so I can show you. So by the time, if I saved that and trimmed it down to an actual, you know, size that was usable and sewed a 1/4 inch around it, it would be very, very tiny. And so I just choose, it's more usable for me to just cut them into squares. And because I can't cut them into a 1.5 inch square, I go ahead and discard that. That doesn't mean you have to. I'm just telling you what I do. All right, and so now I just sew these two together. I can take these stickers off, just set them over here. I usually just pile them over here in the corner, and then I just throw them away at the end. I guess you could try to reuse them if you wanted to, but there are so many stickers that come in here. I've never really tried to reuse them. I mean, this one pack lasts me for a long time, and I sew a lot. And so then when I stitch these together, I just use an accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance. Some people like to use scant. I don't. I just try to use, you know, cut exactly and sew exactly. This is my 1/4 inch seam. And so I just put it right there. Stitch along there. I'll bring this back over here. All right, now this should measure 12.5 inches long. This is the top row, and we can just, so it should measure 2.5 tall, which is what we cut these strips, and then this should be 12.5 inches long. So that's the top row. And now what we're gonna do is piece this little section right here, which is the school bell, and then add the side backgrounds. So all I'm gonna do is take this, the piece M, and I'm gonna take these G's. I'm gonna take that off, even though I can sew over it. I mean, I know what piece it is, so I don't need to. But I don't want you to be intimidated by small pieces. It really doesn't matter. This is just an easy corner triangle. It doesn't matter if it's 3/4 of an inch or even 1/2 inch or something. You can just simply stick it on your machine and sew from corner to corner, and that's all you need to worry about. It does not matter how big the piece is. I need to find me another little scrap of fabric. I lost my other one. Now on this, you have to stitch one side before you can stitch the other side on. You have to press it back. So I'm going to hurry and press that open. And I normally would be chain piecing and doing other, you know, using these little scraps I have and you know, like sewing 2 squares together and things like that. But again, just for the video, I'm just going to sew with a little scrap in between. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take that sticker off. And then this one's going to go on the other side. And it's going to go this direction. So now what I've done at this point is I cut the square. So I cut this piece that's for the bell 1.5 inches square. So this should, when these open up, measure 1.5 inches square still after you press it and everything. If it doesn't, that's when you can lay your ruler down and trim it down to that if you want, if you feel like it's a little bit wonky. But that's all you're doing with easy corner triangles, is just shaping it differently. Now, let me pull this. I can pull this size over. Let me see if I've got a rotary in here in my little sewing drawer. And this is where I love to just trim up any excess. Now, I can see that I can trim this off the top just a little bit. You probably couldn't see that. But now, when I go to sew this to either side, I can see that that goes in just a little bit, but I can make up for that by making sure that this is straight right here. Now you can see the back right there. Just, I don't know if you can really see that because it's very minuscule, but that corner goes in just a little bit. But by correcting that as you're laying it down and sewing your 1/4 inch seam, that's not going to be a big deal at all. Okay, so now I'm just going to continue sewing, and I'm going to do this row. I'm just going to sew this to this side, then that allows me to sew this to the bottom, and I'm just going to keep sewing so that you can see step by step. And again, if I go too fast and you think you missed a step, I have this exactly step by step on my blog as well. So, all right, I'm going to start sewing. Okay, here we go. How did you like that quick silent sewing? So here we have 5 rows. They should all measure 12.5 inches wide. And now I'm just going to sew them together. I'm going to press all of these seams open, these 4 seams open, and I'll be back and show you the front of the block finished and the back of the block, what it looks like pressed open. Okay, here I am with the block all complete. This measures 12.5 inches square, and this is what the back looks like with all the seams open. Now, of course, you don't have to press your seams open. I just think that it makes my block more accurate in size because, you know, see all these seams, if you press to one side, sometimes that takes up like a fabric width. How do I explain? Like how tall the fabric is on the sides. If both of them are going to that same side, then that kind of pulls this bottom fabric up. And so if you keep doing that with this many seams, it could get a little bit smaller. I feel that if I press open to right here, let's see, can you see that closer? You can see those threads there where I've sewn. Then it's just more accurate because it lies flat. That's why I want it to lie flat, is because it's more accurate. I know that it's gonna lie flat. You know, if I pressed my seams to one side or whatever, I know it will lie flat when it's quilted and things like that. So that's not a problem. It's not that I want my block to be super duper flat. It's just that I want the seams themselves to be flat so that it's all spread out correctly so that it measures right. Hope that makes sense. So that's what my first one looked like. This one, I forgot to tell you, I made this one out of my Be Basics fabrics. This one I made out of Prim, and this one I put borders on with my penmanship bee background. I thought that was fun to use with this block because, you know, it's a schoolhouse and it's penmanship. But for this one I used all of my Prim fabrics, and you can use a border on this as well. So what I would do when I put borders on is I cut 2.5 inches wide by 12.5 inches long so that they would fit on the sides right there, right? And then for the top, you would cut, by the time you sew these together, then this would measure 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Then you'd want this to be 16.5. You know what, I think I only cut these 14.5. Anyway, so you'd want them 16.5. But that's kind of what that would look like. All right, and then I thought it might be kind of fun, instead of doing another background for the bottom, you could add another piece of green in a different print for the bottom so it looks like it's even, you know, on a bigger area of grass for recess. Who wouldn't want that, right? So that's if you want borders. It just depends on, you know, what you want to do with the block. Now, I showed, let me grab these for a second. I showed these, you know, before and in my floss tubes and things like that. But this is a bag that Christy from Crosshatch Quilts made for me. And this is a 12-inch block for my first Farm Girl book. This is my Scrappy Strawberry. And so you could take this and make a project bag just like this, just by adding the top, by quilting it, and use it for your schoolhouse samplers. And so that's what I plan on doing with this block. Or this is another bag that my friend Annette made for me, and she used from my, oh my word, I've got threads everywhere. She used my Rise and Shine Rooster 12-inch block for my Farm Girl Vintage 2 book, and then added smaller borders around it just so that the piecing wasn't going all the way to the edge, you know, and added that. And so that's another idea. You could do that, or, you know, you could make this part right here go over to the side so that it zips this way. So you could put your projects in this way so that the bag sits this way instead of right side up. I don't know. There's a lot of different things that you can do with this block besides just adding it in with the other blocks in Spelling Bee or all of my other 6 and 12-inch blocks. Now, This is the 6-inch block. This is a mini. I'm sure I've shown you this before, but I like to take a lot of my 6-inch blocks and put 1.5-inch borders around them. And I have that pattern on how to do that in my first Farm Girl Vintage book, and that's the farmhouse pot holders. I showed you how to do that, and then I just quilt the back individually. But especially for Spelling Bee, I made a lot of these mini quilts because I wanted to be able to spell things out, like you saw in the opening video, things that I do with these. And in my Spelling Bee book, I tell you the directions how to do this because I call them flashcards. So I have a section in my book called flashcards, because remember those from school where you'd hold things up and spell them or say what they were. But these are some of the blocks that I have made from Spelling Bee book into flashcards. And then I can use them in my banners and my buntings. And I really like to just do scrap fabrics with this. I use my scrappy stash and I just pull fabrics and put some fun blocks together. This would be really cute with a button sewn in the middle. There's the cell, all of these blocks. I don't have all of them right here to show you, but I don't have all 18 picture blocks here, but I think there's a dozen here. There's my home block. That was fun to use different scrappy backgrounds for the window. And then the sewing machine block. This one I did a little bit of embroidery on for the needle. You wouldn't have to do that if you didn't want to. And I used my little text fabric right here for that, and I fussy cut it so it said buttonhole stitch right there. I thought that was fun. Here's the little car from the book and the scrappy heart. Oh, and I brought this out to show you. This isn't in the book, and this is actually a PDF pattern that I did. I did this as a tutorial, and then I put it into a PDF pattern, and that's available at Fat Quarter Shop. And, you know, they're the ones who publish my book because they are the owner of It's So Emma, which is the publishing company. So this is kind of fun. And in that PDF, I have 2 different sizes for this block too. And then I fussy cut that to say, have a happy day, going to school. And so these are just some of my flashcards. I keep these in vintage locker baskets. And so I did a bunch of letters. See, here's a bunch of M's, H's, just whatever, it goes through the alphabet. And then you can literally spell out whatever you want to say, you know, for any holiday, any occasion. A lot of times I keep the words home on my mantle, and I just use a little clothespin and some jute to hang that across my mantle and put little screw eyes in the side so that I can clothespin all of these. And of course I have punctuation blocks so I can say whatever I want. So we can do the math, percentages, let's see, plus. I have to do 2 matching parentheses. And it's just kind of fun to do all the punctuation as well. So I have a ton of these. This is only, I actually have like 4 or 5 of these baskets full. Also do the matching quotations. I don't know, it's just kind of fun. And I really like being able to spell out whatever I want. And a lot of times when I go to do like my workshops, I'll take these with me and spell things out, you know, the name of the book or the block or something that we're doing, and use them in my home and for holidays, for celebrations. It's really kind of fun. And so there's one more thing that I wanted to show you, because it's this time of year and because it's the Schoolhouse Block. I decided to do my next set of stitch cards doing the school theme as well. And so this is set J, and these will be coming out in 2 or 3 weeks. And so I took blocks from my Spelling Bee and made them into the cross stitch. So this is the globe block from the book, and this is the apple. Of course I made it gingham, because who doesn't want a gingham apple, right? And then there it is in cross stitch. Here's the Schoolhouse Block in cross stitch, and then the telephone, because when I went to school, this little 3-room schoolhouse, I remember my teacher had a little rotary phone on her desk all the time, and this one would be cute with a little button in it too. So I need to finish these into pillows for my little bowl here. Now, for those of you who are new here, you may not know that I have done a tutorial on how I finish these little pillows and from my stitch cards, and they're fun. This is another one that I did from my spelling bee book. That's the house in spelling bee. No, that's the Christmas one. Never mind. Different house, different book. But that's kind of fun. So I'll be doing that and finishing that up. And I sure hope that you enjoyed this tutorial for the 12-inch block. And let's see, a couple of things I wanted to say is just because I press my seams open doesn't mean you have to. And obviously you saw that when I'm sewing, I do not use pins usually. That doesn't mean that that's not correct to use pins. You can totally use pins. I don't even really know of other people who don't use pins either, but you can see my fingers are my pins. I just kind of match up the seams and I sew as I go. But there's nothing wrong with using pins. I do have my double pins that I use that look like this. If I'm having a seam that doesn't want to match up, then I'll just barely stick these in. I won't stick them like this because I don't want to distort the fabric, which is another reason I don't use pins. I feel like they distort the fabric. I'd rather just hold it flat along my seam guide where it goes and make sure it runs, you know, through under the foot where it needs to. But anyway, so a lot of times I will use these if I need to, but most of the time I don't use pins. But I don't want you to think that that you shouldn't use pins or that it's wrong to use pins, because I do not want you to think that. As you know, there are so many different ways to sew, and there is really no right or wrong way. I'm just showing you how I sew and how I make my blocks for those of you who are new to my books and want to know. And so let me grab my things to show you what I'm going to do for a giveaway for this week. This is my last giveaway. It's the last week of the summer, and I want to announce last week's giveaway as well, so I'll be right back. Okay, let's talk about giveaways. I have a whole pile of stuff to give away. I've been doing giveaways all summer long to celebrate my 1-year anniversary here on my channel. And speaking of that, I want to thank you guys so much for subscribing, watching my videos, sticking with me, and leaving wonderful and nice comments and letting me know what you'd like to see and, you know, what you're loving about my tutorials and my videos. I so appreciate that, and I'm going to be continuing on doing lots of fun stuff. But I think this is going to be my last giveaway for that celebration, but I'm sure I'll be giving more things away, you know, for other reasons. But let's talk about last week's giveaway and announce the winner. So Cassidy picked the winner this morning, and I've left a comment on my last week's video, which was the So Simple Shapes Remix number 6 block. Remember the canning jar block? And so Heather Ellis, you are the winner. Congratulations. And I left you a comment, and we'll get in touch that way. And that was so fun. Last time I had you leave me a comment with the word canning jar, because that's what we did with the applique. And so I really had a great time reading the comments and seeing all the things that you do with canning jars and how you creatively use the word canning jar in a sentence. That was really fun. And thanks so much, everyone, for entering. And so for this week, because we're doing the schoolhouse, we're going to use that word. So I want you to leave a comment using the word schoolhouse in any way you want. And so what I'm going to be giving away is this pile of goodness. And I'm going to be showing you some of the things that I used in this week's tutorial. So I'm going to be giving away one of my quick press seam rollers. And I'm going to be giving away a package of my So Handy stickers. And of course, the Seam So Easy guide. Since they're back in stock, I always want to give one of those away. And this one happens to be in denim. And then I'm going to give away a 10-inch stacker of my Bee Basics fabric. So I did a new Bee Basics and Bee Backgrounds at the same time, but the backgrounds are separated into a different stacker, and the basics, which are the colors, are in one stacker, and so I'll be giving away that. And then all the rest of this has to do with, you know, like school supplies, right? So glue, you have to have glue at school, so I'm going to be giving away another of the Sue Daily glue tape, right? And this is my set. I think this was the first set that I did. I can't remember if it was the very first or not, but this is my one that has the little cross stitch, the pins, the scissors, the stitches. Okay, and so there's that washi tape and scissors. Okay, even though these aren't really school scissors, upside down, school scissors, because you know, you don't want to cut paper with these, but still scissors. So that's the school theme. And here's a set of my Cute Cuts cutting rulers. These are my rectangular rulers, and I have 5 of the smallest size. This is the smallest, and it keeps going up into this set. So there's 5 of my trim it rulers, and this is what I cut. This is the size that I use most of the time that I cut all of my fabrics out when I'm doing my blocks and things like that. And so I love these rulers. And I'm going to be giving you a clipboard, because we all need clipboards for school, right? So this is one of my new clipboards with, it's under my Be Organized line of things to organize the sewing room. And that has my stitch fabric in. I'm going to be giving away my spelling bee book, a copy. And I'm going to be giving away this notebook, which I've shown you before, but this is my stitch notebook, and it's got light pink graph paper in here. Okay, and it's spiral bound. It's a really fun notebook. And then last but not least, I'm going to be giving away this office bundle, because this is a bunch of school supplies in here. We've got file folders, we've got a lined notebook, we've got bookmarks, stickers, some mechanical pencils, some sticky notes, some little tab dividers that have little stickies on it so you can fold it over the edge of your papers to label. I've got some cute oversized paper clips here, and another roll of washi tape with sewing machine. And it shows on the back all of the stuff that comes in here. So let me move this belly band over a little bit. That's all the stuff that comes in there. And I love this box too. After I've used mine, I took this out and I used this box to organize my papers because it holds perfectly. So that's what I'll be giving away to one winner. So I'm looking forward to reading your comments, and all about using the word schoolhouse. And let's see, what else do I want to tell you? Oh, next week, you're going to have 2 weeks to enter this, because next week I'll be out of town, so I won't be filming. But the next week I'll be filming for the opening first week of my Happy Place sew along. I'll be filming the tomato pin cushions and how we do that. And so during that tutorial and for week 1 of that sew along, I will announce the winner for this. So hope you all had a great time in my sewing room with me today, and I will chat with you later.